Our first sighting of the pyramids. Just make it out. Our first meal in Egypt. Thanks to the generosity, the graciousness of Ahmed. Ahmed, you want to say hello? Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. This is the Stela of Namar, or Nina, and he's considered the very first king of United Egypt. Statue of a priest found in Saqqara, made of wood, detail in the eyes. A depiction of Seneb the dwarf, various stages of importance, magical powers, but his children are placed in place of his legs, very symbolically. This is the outer coffin from King Akhenaten. The head part has been stripped, but this is the body. Some of the smaller items from King Tut's tomb. Scene depicting King Tut fishing and hunting wildfowl. Shot of the funerary temple, which is connected to this pyramid. It's for the queens, wives, mothers of the pharaohs. Originally, all the land you see out here was part of the regular floodplain, which meant it was cultivated. With the dam, it limited, and they lost 7 kilometers of arable, cultivatable land, and the population seeped into this area, and so now it's residential. The workers did the building and the mummification. So the story goes that Imhotep was here enjoying himself with his friends well before he ever became pharaoh, and the only part of the Sphinx that was exposed was the head. He had a dream that the Sphinx asked him to uncover the rest of his body, and he would be rewarded with the throne. The story of that dream is recorded here on this stela between the paws. This is the back of the Sphinx, currently under restoration. This is the causeway, the pitch causeway up from the funerary temple, where the body of the king will be prepared, and then coming up this way, and then being delivered to final resting place. Inside the chamber, inside the pyramid. Heading out now. One of the solar boats. learning about making papyrus from the time of the pharaohs till today. The view from our balcony. It's Nile. See one of the dinner cruise boats. So this is the face of Memphis, said to be the face also of Queen Hatshepsut, originally made of alabaster, and over time it does show the erosion and the accumulation of the sand. Much of this area would be subject to the flooding of the Nile, and so much of this was buried under silt. Statue of Ramses II. See detail, the color that is left on his wristlet, all made of the red granite sarcophagus. Wonderful detail. Statue of Ramses II at full size with the legs would have been about 10 meters in full height. Beside we see a carving of the sun, who later became a high priest. Still such sharp details, including his sword. This is considered unique. The marking on his shoulder, perhaps a tattoo. See some of the handicrafts using reeds to make mats and baskets. Some of it's made of wheat shafts, and some of it from reeds, some to strain cheese, some for shopping baskets.
It's very windy.
This is inside the tomb of King Unas of the 5th dynasty. This is all in the alabaster. This is the sarcophagus inside this chamber. This is actually a pyramid from the 6th dynasty. This is a pyramid from the 6th dynasty. The method of construction was very different. It was basically chambers, small chambers filled with rubble, and then faced so that it looked pretty good on the outside, and though made it easy pickings for people who came along later to take off the facing stone. This indicates that it was restored. It was in disrepair by the 19th dynasty and then restored by pharaohs of 19th excavation, still using the methods. Inside this tomb, and we saw the book of the pyramid and the
This
walls
one's
of the
made.
king.
You need the cartouche. You see the cartouche? Can you see the cartouche?
Oh, yes. Very long reigning king.
The very long, you got it. That's one of those.
false door inside. So along the causeway, we found many of the stones that are decorated, showing offerings that would have come up to the tombs. Beautiful piece. It includes cells, which is beautiful for this kind of engraving here. All that remains of statues that probably lined the causeway, the entranceway to King Djoser's pyramid.
On a floating boat, and his mission was a vizier. He would observe for the workers, and this was his mission, to observe them while doing the job and to make sure that the king, the workers doing the job to the king in the right way.
By the tomb of Menroca. He himself was a advisor to the king, and this would have been the false door, the offering table, depictions of his wife on either side, and essentially the walls tell his life story according to him, and it includes all the different offerings that were brought to the god. Again, we're in the tomb of Menroca. This is not where his body was actually buried. This is a house, if you will, built above the burial site for his spirit. A scene showing fish. We're in the tomb of the bulls. And the bulls were the manifestation of Ptah, the god, the local god Memphis, and we're in a massive tomb, hallways. This is an example of one of the sarcophagi, and it's all balsate, and it's just weighs tons, and inside would be a mummified. This is another one. It's a bit of a mystery as to how these massive, massive sarcophagi found themselves here in these close-up tunnels of one of the sarcophagi. And again, the beautiful etching and engraving, just as you would find for a nobleman. And these again are all for the bull, the physical manifestation. In the Museum of Imhotep, this is referred to as the starvation stone. It was found along the causeway on the approach to the step pyramid. So the facing, this is the lower level of the bent pyramid, and the facing is still so beautifully smooth. Walid said, be careful of the bats, not the hats. He said this 2 steps from the very top. Walid is not my favorite person right now. Now we're inside the Red Pyramid, heading down the shaft. Well, we've come as far as we can come in the Red Pyramid. It's the ceiling from this chamber, which may have been the resting place of the king, though nothing was ever found here. Bring up.
We have here, by the way, 3 kinds of carpets. We have pure natural silk, all the silk from the animal, the one from the back, the other from the front. Turn around, take from the middle, take both of them down and cut. This one, it's very hard to work. Here in Egypt, we don't use no, we use this, it's better for the nail. Anyone want to try? No. Vegetables, the color.
So this is camel wool, also dyed vegetable, natural dyes. On our way to the older area of Cairo, we'll be going to the Coptic and Old Jewish and areas of the Sindel Slahi. When Fustat, the older section.
The Egyptians made the wall to protect Egypt from the Bedouins from time to time to attack Egypt, and that's the meaning of the word Egypt, which has been converted into Misr.
بس انا انا بعمل دي تاني واحده بعد القلعه بس عشان جاي من شرق الهرم ما صدقت بقى
The Ben Ezra Synagogue.
So we believe that Christianity was introduced to Egypt in its very early stage, because simply Jesus and his mother, they had to flee and they came to Egypt. So Egypt is one of the early places maybe in the world that got introduced to the story of Christianity and the advent and the beginning and the emergence of this new religion, which is the Christianity.
His last name is Masri.
Right.
Masri. His family is from Syria, but must have come through Egypt.
Yes. So this was good, and it was very large. That and
The lady,
do it properly.
the lady that
This smaller building is in the courtyard of the Ben Ezra Synagogue. So in the basement of the synagogue was the mikvah, and this story goes that Ben Ezra chose this particular spot because traditionally this is the spot near the river Nile that Moshe was drawn from by the back princess structure of the Ben Ezra Synagogue. This being the opening through which be able to access inside the cavern church, and traditionally this is the area where the Holy Family, including Jesus, fled for safety during the reign of Herod. So you can see that different pieces probably collected to keep this church in shape. Now we're coming in through the back entrance of Shar Shemaim. There was a delay because we're waiting for permission from one of the heads of the local Jewish community. So the police can't give permission and the military can't give permission. Ultimate permission lays with the Jewish community because this is a functioning synagogue. of Muhammad Ali, and it's situated within the citadel, basically a fortress of Saladin.
Y encima, media lua, significa.
It's built by Muhammad Ali for him and his family. There's another part of a palace, another separate palace for the women. The fortress walls date from the late 1170s. The mosque and the palace were built during the reign of Muhammad Ali. First mosque we've come to in the Citadel complex. This follows the classic design of an open courtyard to bring in light and air. 4 corners sectioned off. Now, the ones that face the altar area where the Imam would speak, there are 2 rows, which would mean at the far end there would be double that, 4 rows. The arches, you can still see just a bit of the red coloring along with the black. And the ceilings, they have the hexagon. Initially, there was inlay of mother of pearl. It's since dropped out. It's what, 700-800
This is
years
the mosque
ago.
that we will visit, the Sultan Hassan, or the madrasa of the Sultan Hassan.
All our view from the Citadel.
This will be the direction, so you can...
So we're a number of kilometers from the Nile. To give you perspective, that's the Cairo Tower, and just over here is the Hilton. We've entered the courtyard of the Mosque of Muhammad Ali. This dates from the early 1800s, around 1830. In the back is a clock that was sent to Muhammad Ali in exchange for the obelisk that he sent off to France. The clock has never worked, so France made out on that one. And this is the courtyard.
The same architect.
Oh, really?
It's the same.
This is modeled on the Blue Mosque. Muhammad Ali hired the same architect. And that's his mausoleum. This side. This shows the alabaster. To look at the columns, are beautiful, but you wouldn't necessarily know that they're all alabaster. The center dome represents Muhammad. The discs on each one in green have his name. The semicircle half domes that are surrounding, there are 4 of them, each representing the 4 successors, his closest companions, and their names. The one that is represented by that semicircle is then put into the discs. Doors of the mausoleum, and inside you can see just make out that it's something of a crypt for Muhammad Ali. Mosque and madrasa are named for Sultan Hassan. They're built during the Mameluke period in the about 120 years, 150 years after his passing. Khalid has emphasized that the art in the mosques is abstract. It's not meant to be representational except the quotes. This particular complex, besides a mosque and madrasa, also was the hostel for the students, and also provided medical services, a hospital, which to a large extent was destroyed by the earthquake. First room as we enter served as a court. The judge would sit here on the platform. The plaintiffs would be here. Beyond was the entrance to the hospital. Courtroom and madrasa and hostel were now in the open court, just to the exterior area of the covered part of the mosque. This forward stand served a very practical purpose. The leader of the congregation would recite prayers from here, chant prayers from here, and those with a louder voice could repeat them so that the congregation could appreciate everything that was being said. This is inside the mausoleum area. Sultan Hassan himself's body was never found. Therefore, it's his son who's buried in the mausoleum. And this would be a stand for a copy of the Quran, a tremendous copy of the Quran, so the verses could be said. We're in the mausoleum of the Shah of Iran. He's buried here. Today happens to be his birthday, so the entire room is covered in flowers. It's probably the single most beautiful room we've been in since we arrived in Egypt. Returning now to Old Cairo. Used to be called Fustat. This is the area for the Coptic and older Jewish community.
This is when they fled to Egypt, and Joseph the carpenter is showing the angel when he came to Joseph the carpenter and asking him to take the child and the mother.
In the hanging church, and this is an illustration of how the floor we're standing on is in fact suspended. This church was built over the ruins of a Roman fortress with special permission, but only if it were to be, in fact, maintaining the fortress, so it could be built over. The iconography here is amongst the oldest. The church itself originally dates from the 5th century. The icon screens are precious elements of this church. This is the row of relics. The relics here in this church are tastefully covered in velvet. Depictions of the saints' relic that are inside. Arrived at the Grand Egyptian Museum. We're going to be waiting for some safety gear before we go in. Very much a building under construction. These are more recently arrived statues, likely coming from the Cairo Museum. plan is for this to be the primary entrance stairway. It'll be lined on either side with very large statues. The wall surrounding the old city of Cairo dates from late mid-900s. We're on the east side. This is actually a minaret. It's rather unique because it was built specifically to accommodate the burning of incense that would then waft into the city on a Friday. We're about to head towards the Victory Gate. Through the Victory Gate, the grand opening. Originally built for returning victorious army, and this would be the reviewing stand where the ruler would be able to look out on his returning army. There is a verse from the Quran here, as well as the one that was near the opening gate. The entrance gate, besides the beautiful carvings, what might greet an enemy could come through this gap. Could be hot oil or some other method of defense. Thank you, Washington. Okay, entering the Khalili area inside the walled city. The style of architecture dates back to the early 1600s. And this building here is from early 1600s. And it was added onto into the very beginning of the 19th century. A number of these buildings date from the mid-1200s, and they were built originally as mosques. So we're at the Beit Knesset of Moshe ben Maimon, Rambam. Even in Maimonides synagogue, there seems to be a little water problem. The sanctuary, the Aron Kodesh, the ceiling had fallen in and has since been repaired. This was Rambam's initial resting place. He was later moved for burial in Israel. This area acted as his own clinic if someone were very ill and in need of constant supervision. They'd be placed here. They would sleep here so that he could check on them, and by virtue of just being in Maimonides' home, they had a better chance of being cured. This is the rooftop off of the synagogue. We're near the original Al-Azhar campus. This is the Al-Azhar Mosque, and it's a lovely spot. but to enter the oldest part of the wall. From the top of the wall surrounding Old Cairo, we see the citadel, we see the Mosque of Muhammad Ali.
Built the mosque inside the citadel of Salah ad-Din.
Okay, that's a Mamluk mosque to the left. Move over a little bit. The Fai Mosque and
Sultan Hassan.
Sultan Hassan. Okay.
Yes, that's the Sultan Hassan Mosque and the Rifai, both together.
Rooftop, taking a look around the old city and out into the newer city. Cairo did earn the name City of 1,000 Minarets. From this gate that we started out earlier this afternoon, going for the incense, that minaret, we've since come through the old city.
Breathtaking one, it's beautiful. You might have a chance to get when you get down to very well restored again.
We climbed up inside the minaret. So essentially we are at this level, which means we climbed from inside from that level. Kept me safe on the steps.
While at night, okay.
Me too. Ah, where did David climb to? Very impressive. We're going through the tent makers area. Walid, what's the name of this craft?
Khayyamiyya.
Khayyamiyya. So we have there the name over there on the street sign. On a particular beautiful mosque of Muwayyid Sheikh and Mamluk. Inlaid doors, the walls. These lanterns are a bit more spectacular with the gold work on them. And the ceilings. And the gold work is still beautiful. Courtyard area. At the columns, you can see that some of these have been repurposed from other religious or governmental buildings at the time that this was originally built. And given that it was not too long after the Crusaders were sent on their way, we know that some of these pieces came from churches.
A very famous poet, someone who writes poems.
Poet, yes.
And this poet, his name is Hassan. Hassan. At the beginning, before when Muhammad claimed he's a prophet and he started to teach people or call people for the Islam religion, this guy Hassan was against him.
It's 10:06, Tuesday morning. On our balcony. We're at the site of a pyramid that had its own construction problems, known as Maidum. It's from 4th Dynasty. The bases apparently had at least 2 steps. It's not quite clear how many altogether. It's all burial sites from 4th Dynasty. This is the lower valley, Fayoum, benefited from the silt deposits over the years. This would be the lower area, closer to the Nile. And the masabas, the necropolis, would have been built on the higher land, which to where they'd bring the limestone and build, being able to overlook the valley. This would be on the west side of the Nile.
You can just have a look. You don't have to go for the whole thing, by the way. It's a kind of adventure. If you have to do it, you will do it.
Okay. The two stelas, part of the funerary temple. We just walked through. It was a very simple little structure. And on the end of the causeway. Coming up hill. It would have been part of the approach to the pyramid. The causeway would end in this funerary temple. Settled into Movenpick in Aswan. Taking a little bit of quiet time by the pool. We're in the newer building. That's the main tower. And there's David.
By your back. Walking like this, and it's difficult to turn around. Right. Even when you are leaving, you are leaving the thing this year, you need to be by your back on the side. But the design itself, it's the design itself.
Although it looks like a mosque dome, it's actually a lighthouse from the 12th century. Tombs of the noblemen. Okay, from the Old Kingdom. Around 3000 BC. We're just sailing past the Botanical Gardens island. The Botanical Garden was assembled from items, plants all over the world. Lord Kitchener was the first to develop it as a botanical garden. It's a good view of Elephantine Island as we motor past. It's the original capital of the Aswan region. This is the
Till 1937.
This is the mausoleum of
became
Aga Khan.
the General Secretary of the United Nations from 1937.
Great rock formations on the coast of Elephantine Island. Buffalo. Natural inhabitants of this area. And this is a bird sanctuary as well.
That area was the first waterfall. We were having 7 waterfalls. They're just running up.
This is used for sand surfing. The Nubian village.
All these strange names.
Old dam.
Here in English, they are Nubian names.
In the Nubian village, marketplace, spices, woven goods, very colorful. Going into Nubian house for some refreshments. It's a dining room in the Nubian home. The vaulted ceiling keeps everything nice and cool, very colorful. And a lot of the furnishings are made out of the palm and of the roof and the rattan furniture and everything. It's all made from the local trees inside. This is the southern tip of Elephantine Island with remnants of different types of temples and ruins. Okay, leaving Aswan on our way over to Faila, well, Angelica, island to see the Temple of Phyla, and just along with all the other water taxis.
The place has changed from being the temple of to being the palace of Anasur. So if I read about the palace of this is the palace.
The market goes with us wherever we go. This is the original construction on this island. This was a shrine in 350 something BCE, and as it was already a consecrated area, a temple was then constructed here. This row of columns finished, this row of columns unfinished, the pylons, which are classics, part of the construction of a temple to divide the earthly from the heavenly, show different scenes of activities of the gods. So the different color of the stone is due to part of the temple being submerged months out of the year. That's why this was underwater completely after the construction of the two dams, and it had to be reconstructed up and high. The destruction of the figures dates back to the Coptic activity, when anything pagan had to be destroyed in order for them to use the structure as a Coptic church. So after a certain point, maybe they just gave up, but they were able to deface a number of these. Again, the Latin writing and the crosses, all evidence of changing it over to be a church. Old dam from the late 1800s to 1902, constructed, which would have sunk most of this area. This temple from Talmudic times, 30th dynasty, and in a desperate attempt to convince the people that these non-Egyptian kings were pure Egyptian. This is the little fellow, supposed to be a dwarf. He's supposed to be essentially a jester, original site of the island of Phyla, which was totally submerged. The temple was initially relocated to the far piece of land that we see before it was replaced on the island of Angelica, which had to be reconfigured to mimic. Taking a ride. Okay, overlooking a cemetery from the Fatima period. This is the first innovation, is the raised tombs along with the domes. So from late 900s, entered the quarry here in Aswan. This is the primary source of red granite. Even this stone here, you can see, is the unfinished obelisk. Had it been finished with its base, it would be the largest, tallest Egyptian obelisk.
They have finished it from 3 sides. The other side.
But it was cracked. Gives a little bit better perspective of how huge this is. David way off in the distance here. Sunrise as we drive down to Abu Simbel.
You wanted to show how about yours? You wanted to show the new
We're heading into the first temple, the larger temple of Abu Simbel. Abu Simbel, the name of the temple's the name of the city, actually taken from a child's name who acted as the guide for the folks in the 18th century who discovered these temples. This is the Temple of Ramses, 19th dynasty, around the years 1350 BCE. Along the entranceway appears to commemorate the capture of slaves. Appears again to be submission of enemy captors. Commemorating battle scenes with Hittites. Ceiling of the entrance. King bringing offerings. You can see on the altar different boots. Made our way into the furthest inner room. This would be the Holy of Holies. The stream of sunlight is significant because it's built in such a way as it hits Ramses on a particular day twice a year. So, whereas the headless now, darkest statue is representative of the dark forces and it never catches sunlight. Scene of the many workers, soldiers bearing the boat. Probably the most colorful pillar in the temple. It's the Queen Nefertari and her husband Ramses II. Wall carving shows, again, Ramses fighting in the battle, and then surrounded all over by the battles going on. This corridor features carvings and still wonderful colors showing worship and offerings. Temple Nefertari, built at the same time as the temple we were just in during the reign of her husband, Ramses. The Temple of Nefertari. Pictures of the god of motherhood and such. It's a woman with cow's ears. Hathor. Vultures on either side of the cartouche. On the other side of the entrance to the inner sanctum. We stopped at the high dam. This gives the best explanation as to where the water was dammed and created the Lake Nasser. This had been one of the narrowest spots of the Nile before the dam created the lake. To give an idea of the size of the dam, it's about the equivalent of 17 of Cheops pyramid. It's shaped essentially like an upside down pyramid, damming the water behind it. There is a single spot for flow from the lake into the Nile. On the other side of the dam is the Nile. It's about 30 meters lower than the lake itself. You can just eyeball it and see the huge difference in the water levels. It's a power station. The water comes in this spot. See the current. Boat ride around the Elephantine Island gives us the opportunity to see it from the water. See the Nubian villages along the way, and also we'll be seeing the monuments. This, we're told, is the site of the temple at the time of the Jewish settlement of Elephantine Island. The settlement would have suffered both from flooding over time and then, of course, when they were attacked and by the local people, and the synagogue, the temple, was destroyed. The other buildings surrounding show evidence of having been a site for worship from pre-dynastic times up to the Islamic period. So this end of the island is just covered with monuments and ruins from probably at least a dozen temples over the centuries. With help, some of the temples are noted for their actual period of time. There's engraving on some stones, some only because of the style of construction, mud brick. This was evidently an approach to temple from maybe an old kingdom. Still colors on the base of the columns, cartouches, remains of a mud brick. Construction here. You can tell by the extra detail around the stones. later period Roman. Tile meter. For flood level. And the water would flow in to this basically stairway, and it would be marked. Just out enjoying Aswan at night, and we're going past a park where people are just enjoying a nice evening. It's about 75 degrees out, very, very light breeze. Everybody's just walking around, having themselves a good time. On our way out of Aswan, we pass a lot of private homes, small farms, and we got a lesson in the advantages of raising palm trees for dates and for produce of all sorts. Fawns, wood. Sugarcane is also raised on private farms, some wheat, and some mango.
So they are giving them how much exactly they should take from the people. So we have taken a train, driving to the area of the tombs. It's not allowed for us like the our simpletons to guide inside. So I was guiding from outside for each tomb and then giving them the free time for getting into the tomb, having a look. Then after finishing the 3 tombs, on our way back, he has seen the sign of the tomb of King Tut. Oh my God, the tomb of King Tut here in the Valley of the Kings. I told him, sir, that's what I told you, that the tomb of King Tut is here and his mummy here in the Valley of the Kings. He said, okay, I want to see the mummy. Really? He said, oh my God. But he said, it's too far from me to the end.
Arrived at Komombo Temple, just north of Aswan.
To go to the hill or the land of gold, or the mountain of gold. Why people call this city like this? And the other side, in the east, in front of Komombo city by the Red Sea, the city of Marsa Alam. All the mines of gold in Egypt, most of them they are in Marsa Alam city. So in the ancient times, ancient Egyptians.
So this temple was devoted both to crocodiles and to Horus, who were said to have been brother gods. This is just a little detail. It shows the sycamore wood that would have been placed in a gap between 2 pieces or 2 blocks of sandstone, and would be placed there, and then water would be applied. The sycamore wood would expand, and it would serve as both a dovetail and a shock absorber between the blocks of sandstone. The purification of the by the gods, air, and this would have been for the crocodile god, and an almost identical image is on the other entrance for the falcon. Coronation of the crocodile king, and we notice the detail is different in the art, the knees, the curviness, the proportions of the hands, significant. So this is the various gods are performing the coronation here of the falcon god. You can note that the eyes appear to be gouged out. They at one time held precious stones. Very impressive. Entrance after entrance after entrance.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of the carving in this part of the temple involves the calendar, the dates, the sacrifices that were appropriate for the correct season. But the style of carving is notable because it's all raised, what we would call embossed, which is a more challenging, more sophisticated method of decoration. This temple, all in all, had been a complete temple. The son of Muhammad Ali decided to take bits and pieces, some significant portions, to make a sugarcane processing factory some kilometers away. The early example of the different instruments that were used in medicine, this would have been found in the area that served as the clinic at the back of the temple complex, the basin in which to wash the instruments, and this is the basis of medicine.
You hear the
Ongoing excavations have exposed mud brick walls, and the items here were just now pulled out of this part of the site. Some of them still haven't dried out from the mud. See the gradual lowering of the roof. The floor would have risen, providing almost a megaphone style design, so that the priests from the inner sanctum, when they spoke, it was with an impressive voice. The ongoing excavation, including rinsing off shards and the like. It's the entrance to the Temple of Horus in Edfu. The most complete temple, thanks to it being partially buried over the years, and the largest intact pylon. So this Temple of Horus, the first elements date from the 18th dynasty, around 1400 BCE. The latest elements, the ones we're looking at here, would be during the Ptolemaic time, as late as 300 BCE. So over the course of about 1,000 under the entranceway, the pylons. Inspiration for Walk Like an Egyptian dancing.
So you know the origin of the dance.
The interior of these halls at the temple were used as shelters during a period of persecution, Roman persecution, Islamic persecution of the local Christian population. Unfortunately, the local Christian population in turn chose to destroy the images of the Egyptian rulers and gods to show superiority of the Christian religion over the local traditional religion. The inner sanctuary. You see the boat that would have transported the holy statues, and behind is the resting place for the statue. According to our guide, here is the offering, a little ahead of its time, of Wi-Fi. According to me, this is the offering of ice cream sundaes. This chamber is devoted primarily to the formulas for aromatherapy, and this area here shows the different diffusers, containers for the oils. And the walls contain the different formulas and showing the process of formulating them. And serve a dual purpose of both drainage system and to protect the temple.
Gold.
Gold. Zalul? It starts with a Z?
Yeah.
Zalul.
Zaghlol.
Okay, we'll look it up. Well, thank you, Yusuf. Boy, they're amazing. Now, are these the kinds of dates that you make honey from? Well, you know,
No.
or jam? You just eat these?
Sometimes jams.
Jams, okay.
From dates, but difficult to be made from these kinds of dates because better to eat this kind of dates fresh.
Ah, okay, well, we'll do our best. Okay. First morning in Luxor, David's enjoying breakfast, as did I, alongside the Nile. When we woke, we saw the different hot air balloons being launched to coincide with sunrise. It's a model of the mountain that holds the tombs. The numbers of the tombs are reflective of when they were discovered. So a certain series was in perfect order, and then later discoveries went in their own order. This depicts the various shafts and tombs that, in fact, are under the mountain. Okay. Tomb of Ramses IV. Entering our first tomb. The ceiling is well decorated and better preserved than the sides, but you still see wonderful colors on the side. Here inside the tomb of Ramses IV, massive sarcophagus. Ceiling full of stars. Of the tomb being used later by Copts who were using it as shelter. This is right near the entrance. Also, a certain amount of destruction was done by those people who were taking shelter here. Tomb of Ramses II, but it's been closed off because of damage internally, so it's not safe. Up here you can see some workers who are still assisting in the this is the place where the workshop, the funerary and mummification workshop was discovered, and these folks are still doing the work of the tomb of Merenptah, who is the son of Ramses II, the one who succeeded his father. He wasn't the eldest, but he was the one who reigned. Didn't reign a very long time. His tomb has a particularly long shaft. It was originally carved for Seti I, who was the father of Ramses II. He chose not to use it, and so it was left for later use. Merenptah took advantage of it. The workers are moving debris and such right above the entrance to the tomb of Merenptah. Some sense of the depth. The shaft goes on for quite a while. Beautiful pillars, both the carving and the color inside this tomb. The ceilings, again, covered in the stars. Really stylish dress. Remarkably stylish dress. Transporting unfinished area where the carvings were done but not finished. The lid of the sarcophagus is just massive. Inside the vaulted chamber. We're about to enter the tomb of Ramses VI. Ironically, because of the construction of this tomb, it meant that the tomb of King Tut was protected. The workers at the time, in removing and in carving out this tomb, ended up putting the debris covering the entrance to King Tut's tomb, so it remained well hidden. The figures upside down show captured folks, probably from warfare, the arms behind them and tied. These ceilings are particularly well decorated. It's beautiful. The detail is just unbelievable.
Mommy coming very fast. Her knee injury hasn't slowed her up.
The ceiling detail is so amazing. Okay, you see a depiction of a child, finger to the mouth. Different stages of life and then journey from death. It's just no way to do justice to the ceiling. All the figures. Depicting the days and the weeks and the years. Again, all this in the vaulted ceiling of this burial chamber. Here, the tomb of Ramses III, known as the last great pharaoh. Reportedly, this was an occasion where the preparation for the tomb took literally a left turn. They were about to cut in, the workers at the time, to prepare the tomb for Ramses III, and they inadvertently found themselves near an entrance for an earlier king, so they had to turn and create a new entrance. And this is where we take our turn in order to now go down the correct hall, which replaced the original hall. And make a sharp turn, so as not to disturb the slumber of a previous king. And some of the more unusual anthropomorphic gods. Journey of the coffin, we have all accompanying multi-headed serpents makes its way down further and further. One of the side chambers. Find them tending the greens. And the gods holding hands and blessing the king. Ongoing excavation work. See them doing it very carefully, basket by basketful, up the line to be hauled away. Okay, going into the tomb of Seti I. The pitch here in Seti I's tomb is more significant, more severe. The ceiling colors are wonderful. The walls appear to be carved, but practically without color. You see drawings, but it's like partway down. The carving hasn't taken place here. They did the mummification process. You see the young king wearing royal leopard skin. Showing captives from the battle. Detail work. Necklace in particular. Inside one of the side chambers. Doing imaging work.
Say something.
King Tut's too. Boons on the walls of the burial chamber. The mummy being prepared. Showing the final preparation and the sarcophagus itself. It's the king himself, and in fact, it looks quite little. It's King Tut. Okay, you saw all the inner coffins in Cairo. We see the monkeys, and this is the outer coffin that was found with the inner ones inside, and the mummy we've seen just across the way.
First, we talk about alabaster. Alabaster, you come in three colors. The best stone in our village, alabaster stone. Okay, the best one. Alabaster, you come in three colors. White, like crystal, like this one. This is the white alabaster, the green alabaster, and the brown alabaster. Okay.
So just like we saw in the tombs where they put the drops first.
Exactly. The same wall in ancient Egyptian time. He painted first by pencil, red or black in ancient Egyptian time. Here now by pencil, that's normally one, and use the chisel and craft tools.
Okay, starting to make the pieces for Eitan and Amira. It's about to start to draw Eitan. Starting from the bottom, evidently, with the end image. Carving out the hieroglyphics for the cartouche, for Eitan's cartouche. So here we have Eitan. He's finishing up carving for Amira, the sim with the finished product. Arrived at Queen Hatshepsut's temple. This is last remaining sphinx of what would have been an avenue of sphinx on either side, and the approach.
Yeah. Zoom in.
Okay, so we are directly across from Karnak when we stand on the second story of Queen Hatshepsut's temple. On the second story, the most important story, is the Shrine of Anubis. And here tells the divine story of Queen Hatshepsut's arrival or birth. And then to the other side of the causeway, it memorializes the expedition to Punt, which was at that time Punt, today's Somalia. These stones here are similar to what would have been found after the uncovering of this temple, and painstakingly put back together to reassemble as many of the statues of Hatshepsut as they have here. This is the sacred space to Horus. Colors would have been protected because after the earthquake, this was essentially entombed. These would be just offerings for the god Horus. We're in the hall that tells the divine story of Queen Hatshepsut's birth, but very little can be made out because of the destruction from the earthquake, 27 BCE. Third floor, and we are seeing the different statues, although identical, of Queen Hatshepsut within the sanctuary in the third floor, and bits and pieces, columns, gateways. Sanctuary entrance of red granite, the vaulted ceiling within this sanctuary. Recently, right far forward of the temple, approximately 30. But years earlier, over 150 years earlier, over 100, including Ramses II, Seti, others, were found in this area, out of their tombs, but still identifiable because of in the wing that tells the story of the expedition to Punt. Can't quite make out too much here. Again, the colors were not well preserved. Neither were the carvings due to both age, natural erosion, and the earthquake. Hatshepsut was known for not waging wars and for being one to pursue trade and peace. Queen Hatshepsut's temple, there had been, not long after completion of construction, temple of her son-in-law, successor, Tutmosis III. The colossi of Memnon, actually statues of Amenhotep. They would have been in front of the pylons of a huge temple, which was recently, bits of it were recently uncovered by German sponsored archaeologists. This is of the 18th dynasty. Sunday evening, just walking along the Nile. Way to Abydos. Here are fields that are being well irrigated. Still the Nile Valley, but with some distance from the Nile itself. See big piles of the harvested grasses, a lot of which have to make their way to market via wagon and donkey. We move from town to town and governor to governor. There was typically a police checkpoint. It's a lot of cabbage fields. This is corn. And some folks doing some final cleanup in the fields. At the little bakery. That's a water buffalo.
That's what we are calling kunava, as you have seen from the right-hand side. Making noodles.
Making noodles?
Noodles with,
Temple of Abydos, which served as a mortuary temple, funerary temple. Again, from the period of Seti I, father of Ramses II, and similar construction to Queen Hatshepsut's temple. Would have been a inclined, been both the initial birth name and the coronation name of Seti. Originally, there would have been the major pylons as entranceways. These are the remains of the statues that would have been in the Osiris position with the arms crossed over the chest. As we approach the temple itself, on either side of the walkway of the entranceway were wells, natural deep water wells. Feature carvings of the glory times of the king, including battle scenes. Pillars feature the king either being blessed by or offerings, giving offerings to the different gods. So there are larger scale carvings, and on the wall some of the remnants of the colors can be discerned. The temple was originally Seti I, but then his son Ramses came along, Ramses II came along, and added or changed a lot of the carvings. This is an example of some of the more confusing images and carvings. Here it looks very much like a helicopter, and next to it a submarine, and below it a fighter jet of some sort. So the question is, from where did these images come? Are we interpreting them the way we see them today, and at that time it was a common image for something else altogether. Here we see the family together. We see Horus, the son behind the mother, behind the father, and here father's being presented with a little tiny statue depicting him. This actually setting a column for the temple, and beautiful carving here of Anubis, the mortuary god. And this is all part of the wall frieze that includes the gifts that were being given to the king, including the life and power that were being given by the different gods to the king. The carvings include the god Habi, androgynous, has both male and female features, and the different crowns represent the different governance or what areas of Egypt all being represented. There's a beautiful carving of Seti, showing him both as a beautifully formed man, and the detail is even particularly impressive in his skirting, and he's making an offering of incense to the god. One of the 7 chapels in the temple is undergoing reclamation, restoration. The ceiling, rather than covered in the soot from later inhabitants, it's been revealed. Very beautiful. And the walls are being cleaned again to reveal the colors. Example of distinguishing between humans and the gods. The humans take a reddish brown color. The gods, as being part of the heavens, take a blue color for their face. And again, this is within one of the shrines, within one of the chapels. It's being restored, so the colors are coming back. Of kings that Manitun referenced when dividing into dynasties. So it starts with Namar and goes on, and the entire complete list up through Ramesses II, with the omissions of Akhenaten and Queen Hatshepsut. Seti I with his son Ramses trying to wrangle an ox that would be used for an offering. Seti I and Ramses here as a young prince. It remains a tomb that was built for god Osiris. So would have been huge, probably vaulted building ceiling over this, and down deep, everything, the pillars, granite, and like black granite.
وقفنا على السكة يعني ده.
Approaching the temple of Dendara, which is one of the later temples from the late Ptolemaic period into the Roman period, dedicated to the god Hathor, who is the mother god. She appears as a woman with cow elements, ears and such, and she is a nurturing god. Right underneath the entrance gate. Inside the funerary chapel, but it's really devoted to birth of Horus. Hathor is nurturing, feeding, and the baby is cared for by both its parents. The images have been defaced by, again, the Christians who came later, because the stories were so similar. The fleeing from the evil older uncle and the like. So in order to push the Christian story, the ancient Egyptian story suffered. Clear evidence of later Christian presence. Of the god Bes, he makes his appearance before a birthing woman to distract her from the pain. Again, he's supposed to be something of a court jester. This would be a depiction of Cleopatra and her son, the son of Julius Caesar, Ptolemy the Last. Hathor image, cow's ears, woman's face, but again, the woman's face has been, the goddess's face has been removed. Ceilings depict all sorts of different creatures, gods from the afterlife, as was understood by those who were leading the religions at that time. 14 phases of the moon are represented here, one by one, till reaching the full moon, which is depicted by the eye. This shows the process of cleaning the ceilings, scaffolding here, and then the black, and then right above the scaffolding, the lighter color is being exposed. These sacred boats of Horus and Hathor appear on the walls of this inner sanctuary. This is the room, the chamber, where offerings would be made once a year. At this back wall, that would have the statues. The priests, in turn, would back out through the wooden doors that would be at the entrance of this room. It's the room for Goddess Nut. Her head and her arms, and below her legs, feet, surround the moon, the stars, the sun, representing day, night, and the seasons. Take one of the two entrances to the rooftop. They come out onto the rooftop after coming up the spiral staircase.
Temples, we are making the entrance with them facing east. Okay, but the Romans after that have changed the direction of the temples because they were believing that the sun, God is coming from the south. Why is this? Because there is something that Egypt about something you're lacking about. The sun moves, the sun moving from.
The gods themselves are marching up the steps to the rooftop. On the exterior walls of the temple, walking along, see, of course, the huge images of the gods. You also get to see the offerings that are being brought. And the beautiful full bloom and blossom lotus flowers at the bottom. Referred to as the sacred lake or the pool of Cleopatra. Steps down At one time, it held many more palm trees. A beautiful spot. The sun is going to start setting soon. Standing inside the small temple devoted to the goddess Isis. All part of the same interior complex. Hello. Hello.
You got this? So this one.
Yes. Yay. Heading back to Luxor and enjoying our sunset. Our little visitor is back. He was here on the balcony earlier. It's dawn. The Deir Medina. This is the Valley of the Workers. We're going to see some tombs. Okay. It's a good view of the homes, the artisans, nobles responsible for creating this. This city of workers dates from Ramesses II, approximately 68 homes with a wall around and a shared roadway. All right, we're heading into the next tomb. Okay.
One in front.
South Bogota? Okay. Wow. Okay, this is inside the tomb of the workers or nobles. Wow.
Lion is sun is two face, Shendian, okay? Shendian is two face, it's in head. Mumi is Horus, is Lum. This second is breast, this in head, this name.
All of these are paintings right on the surface. These are not engraved pieces, but they are just as beautiful as they could be.
This work, this pieces, for Edith is gonna be cat.
Meow.
This
Yes,
snake
we have our sound
music,
effects
and this music.
and the harpist.
Horus.
This is perhaps the most complete of all we've seen. It's amazing. The colors. Careful.
This is banana. Banana. Banana بالسيدم دواية. دلبلي. دلبلي.
Okay, okay.
What's your head? What's your head? What's your head, man? What's your head? What's your head? What's your head?
Heading down into the third. Worth coming down the tiny steps, low steps, inside.
Là, ça fait ça, c'est moins.
The entire ceiling is just covered.
Là, il y a pour le local, c'est moi qui prends pas de fiche.
In here with other people. This really is the only archaeological find that gives a hint of the day-to-day lives of the people who created all the monuments and temples at the time of the Ptolemies that was later used as a church. This is the scales, the heart on the left and the feather of justice on the right. And this is the jury with the feather of justice above, who will be judging the soul as it enters the afterlife. They're restoring the third shrine. David doing his work. We're entering the Valley of the Queens.
This is just complete. Sit.
Colors are remarkable. The engravings there, it's bas relief. Again, they're a bit raised. So to give the dimensional feel, the colors are just gorgeous.
And that is food. And the man crying. It's crying. And the cat is eats. The cat is the cat. And the cat is a sky.
Serious Anubis. And silly Anubis. It's a tremendous chamber. And more beyond. Heading into the next tombs now. Inside this tomb, we have the fetus of the child of the king, Ramses III.
No, not yet.
This sarcophagus, we saw the mummy in the Cairo Museum. It's a huge granite sarcophagus. It's about to enter tomb of Titi, one of the queens of Ramses III, who may or may not have been involved in the plot to assassinate him. Ready to go to the last tomb of the Valley of the Queens. This is, again, in the Valley of the Queens, there were tombs for the young children of the queens and kings. So we see princes being depicted here, the prince to whom this tomb was dedicated. King depicted with brown skin, making the offering. Here again, offering the candle, holding the ankh, and the different gods depicted in blue-green. Approaching the Karnak temple complex. This would have been the canal that provided access, water, transportation options to the temple. The latest part of the construction is the outermost pylon, which remained unfinished. The row of ram sphinxes was constructed by Ramses II, who appears underneath the chin of the rams. It's the first open courtyard to which successive kings added their own stamp. The technique of building the huge pylon is explained here by using mud bricks, creating basically a pile higher and higher and higher on either side. They would then stack the blocks that were to be the pylon and then later remove the mud bricks. This original row of Ram's sphinxes placed here by Ramses II was moved back by one of his successors, Ramses III, in front of the columns and the wall that he had built. This hall consists of 134 columns. These are the blossom-topped columns. And this one features bees, flower papyrus columns. And again, we have bees, of course, many other images. The more difficult style of carving is typical of the period of Seti I, and it's particularly beautiful. He sits on the inside of the pylon. The columns toward the center, the taller columns, were constructed by him, and they feature that style of art. The next columns out from the center were by his son, Ramses II. Ramses II took the opportunity to replace Seti I's cartouches, many of them with his own name instead. So we can tell the age of the columns, the king at the time, more by the art than by the cartouches. This is the name of Ramses II, both his birth and coronation. It's the tallest obelisk in Egypt, and erected Queen Hatshepsut. This would be the throne, and right down the center, right down to the Nile, through the columns. Columns of papyrus, columns of lotus flower. This was a sacred lake that the priests, when they came over from their towns, their homes, they would come down the steps. They would immerse themselves before entering the temple complex. Reminiscent of a movie scene. The Spy Who Loved Me.
Table,
The Luxor Temple. This obelisk, its twin, is in France, given by Muhammad Ali, and that was in exchange for the clock that he received that doesn't work. These tremendous statues of Ramses, a couple of which recently appeared here, were reconstructed. The baboons at the base of the obelisk are there to greet the sun. This is Ramses II court. Mosque was built around the tomb of one of the Fatimas when they came to Egypt. It was placed at ground level. That is not a window, that is a door. It was placed over the site of a previous Coptic church. And what's since been uncovered, of course, is this whole temple. So a magnificent temple underneath. It out to us that these particularly beautifully constructed columns, also papyrus buds, are from the time of Queen Hatshepsut. The detail is evident. It's 18th dynasty, and beside it, Ramses, who preferred big, bold, but less detail, less distinction, from the 19th dynasty. It's a perfect illustration of the history. The columns of the temple of Luxor have, from the church that was off to the far right, and from the later mosque from the Fatimas, built around the mausoleum. We're in one of the inner courts now, and the competing civilizations are depicted right here. The Romans came along. They couldn't quite destroy the engravings, so they plastered over and painted. They set up their columns here and covered up the entrance to the inner sanctuary and painted this as well. So it should be more like an altar to their Roman god. Back in Cairo, back at the Marriott, and our floor is the 8th floor this time, so the view is a little different, and it's just as busy and noisy as ever. Thursday morning, we're back in Tahrir Square, and it's a very hazy day. It's the Egyptian Museum. This was a renowned Gropey, which is undergoing some renovations. This is what was really the elegant, probably more French part of town. We're sitting in front of Gropey's. These are beautiful old apartment houses. This is old Talak Harb. Everybody is lined up for lunch. See, they have a table, assembling. This is a thriving lunch business. So, on American University in Cairo campus, this is the old campus, but this is the one that I remember. And as noisy as it is, it's so quietly. Heading out of Cairo Center.
Linda, how's your mango juice? What is it? What is it? And?